Good afternoon. Hello, folks. Do click the live thumbs up if you want to stay with us for a little while, and do say hello, because at the moment I've got absolutely no idea whether there's anybody there. Oh, there might be 4 of you. That's brilliant. Say hello, and we'll get going straight away. I'm hoping that you can hear me. We were using the system last night, and it was just not playing ball, and it wasn't playing ball first thing this morning either, so let me know. Okay, who's there? Anybody from the regulars? Okay, so what this is a live Q&A for the next hour or so, basically about dowsing. For those of you that are watching on playback, then you may be able to watch an edited version, which is the highlights of whatever we discuss in the next hour or so. And obviously now you're watching live, so do say hello as I say. Hello. Very good, Steve. Nice to see you. And David, nice to see you. And Tom, nice to see you too, sir. And yes, it's been a little while. And what I was saying was, obviously this is the live, so this is the meandering chit chat, and regular attendees will know that the hello, Nancy. That's fine. No, I enjoyed that. So just something a little bit different, I think. We might be looking more in the garden in future. Regular attendees will know that we basically just allow this to flow through and see where it takes us for the next, as I say, hour or so. Good day, mate. Well, okay. So I've put, hello, Barbara V. Nice to see you. What have I put? What have I called? Kimberly. Good heavens. Long time since I've heard from you. Nice to see you. Good to see you. Hope you're doing okay over there. Not long, 7 weeks till the elections are over, I guess, and then things might calm down, hey? So, what did I put as the title of this? Diggsy says, favourite topic today? I'm looking at my notes and I've gone completely blank. Crossing water lines, of course, Diggsy, earth rays and all the rest of it. Okay, so water lines, health, yeah, okay, got it. Fran, good to see you. Nice, bonjour. JF, good man, good to see you. Dixie, 2 o'clock in the morning, or whatever, 1 o'clock in the morning. Good, okay, so yeah, we're going to be looking at Ron. Hello, we'll be looking at Ron, but anyway, we're going to be looking at water lines, health, all this sort of stuff, and we're going to be asking the questions that actually a couple of questions. Sally, you may remember last time, about 3 weeks ago or so, the last live that we did, we had some really interesting content around a question that Sally had posed, and yeah, you made it, Ron, well done. And this week, actually, this is the main topic about the water lines is one from Sally. And also, I'm going to raise another issue that I was talking to her about. We'll discuss that some more. And that's the thing to do with dowsing and the low vibrations. And you would have seen probably on the community tab the comment from Carol Ann, who's a regular. And she's saying, well, I don't think I agree that dowsing is necessarily the low vibrational cousin to spiritual connection. And we'll deal with that in due course as we go along. And I'm sure it'll raise some pretty interesting discussion amongst everybody. So first though, I'm going to quickly just do some housekeeping and some admin and let you know what's happening here, because it has been 3 weeks, and in fact there is not going to be a live next week either, which means we've only got this one opportunity this month in September. Thank you, JF. So the reason for that is that we've got builders in next Monday, and there's no way I am going to do a live with banging and crashing immediately on the other side of that wall. So apologies, but this is the only one for today, for this month. Next month in October, we'll probably get a couple in at least, so keep your eyes peeled for that. If you are not getting notifications that these are coming up, I am trying to give a bit more warning, get something on the community tab a bit more often. But if you're not getting those notifications, it's that magic grey bell, apparently, that should be working. Reno's mate, I don't understand that. Sorry, Dixie. So I've got a little fly in here as well that keeps busying around. So if I start sort of blowing things, see, can you see that little thing? Anyway, That's going to be really annoying if that carries on for the next hour. So it's been really busy here, and there are. If you want to catch up with some more structured conversation and interviews I'm doing this week, I've actually got 3 interviews lined up this week. On Wednesday, I'll put these links in the tab after the event. I've got an interview with a guy called Gary M. Vasey. He's got a YouTube channel, and he's a writer. He writes a lot of very little sort of horror type stories. He's always been fascinated by the paranormal, so I thought I'd have a chat with Gary to see what he's about. So that's on Wednesday. That's going to be broadcast a little later, but look out for that. I'll keep notifications up on the tab. On Thursday, I've got a recording with Neil Fellows, another one from Total Wellness Club. I think a lot of you enjoyed the previous conversation I had with Neil, and we're going to be talking about clearing negative energy from houses. So again, Diggsy, this is sort of something that you might like to pop in on. Renovations, yes, renos, yes, of course. Sorry, cool. Yeah, renovations, that's ongoing, Diggsy, ongoing. LAS, good to see you, Lawrence. You must be back home again, I'm guessing. So, yes, indeed, Diggsy. Yeah. In fact, if you saw the garden video, anybody, you'll see and you'll know that we're working on the garden on an ongoing basis. Same thing applies to the house. We've been here 3.5 years now, and it's just ongoing, gentle renovations and different building works at different degrees. So 2 interviews, and then on Friday I've got another interview. Friday you might enjoy this one, actually. Not that you won't enjoy the others if you want to pop in, but Friday you might enjoy particularly because it's a live and it's here on YouTube. And this is for a lady called Lisa M. Gunshaw, the Buddhist biohacker. Again, there'll be a link in the comment section below after this live today. So Lisa, that should be an interesting one to drop in on. That is about sacred space. I mean, the titles for all of these conversations are pretty arbitrary, as you'll know. Usually conversations and interviews go off on some kind of tangent, and obviously we get whatever comes up as appropriate. So, but keep an eye out, and I'll put those links in there, and you might enjoy those. The lives are always entertaining because it could go absolutely anywhere, as we know. So, and the other thing I want to say before we get into those questions on health is some of you will be aware that I do run house healing training for up to about 8 people in a group, and we're coming up to, well, next month we'll be halfway through the first training course for this year. So it started a few months ago. Next month will be month number 5. The courses are 10 months, right? And I'm looking to probably start another session of training for another 8 people, following the same format as the first one. So if you want to have a look at that, go to my website, www.knightsrose.com, and look under workshops. And there's some information there about the current training. It is very much about a self-development process. So if you're a therapist, like the current 8 people, we got 3 Feng Shui therapists on there, consultants on there, because they're wanting to look into some of the spiritual energies behind their work, if you like, or adding to their work and their knowledge. But if you're a therapist of any kind that wants to actually help ease a client's situation so that your work that you currently have knowledge of and experience of can be eased by doing the geomancy for them, because obviously when they go back from your therapy, they are going into a probably clogged space. So what I'm saying is this sort of training is ideal for therapists that want to add to their current experience, or if you just want to use it to help friends or work on your own house. Equally, it's great. 10 months, £160 a month. It's intensive self-development because that is the nature of the work. It is one-to-one. It is the individual as the co-creator, the individual as the unique point of awareness, which is, as you know, regulars, what I always go on about on these lives. And interestingly, actually, next month, when we come to a live, we might possibly look at nutrition from this aspect, because there's what looks like a really interesting article in New Scientist magazine where science has finally latched on to the fact that we're all different. And they are saying in that New Scientist magazine that, well, actually, what's good for one person isn't necessarily good for another. We'll look at that, and we might touch on that at the very end of this session today. So that's what's going on in my world. I hope your world is wonderful. Hello, Martin. Don't worry about being late at all. Just everybody joins whenever they want, and everybody leaves whenever they want, and that's absolutely fine. So that's all the admin. That's all what's going on in my world. Hope your worlds are wonderful. We're going to carry on and dive into these questions now. And obviously, as usual, I think you're all regulars. So if you've got any questions as we go along, doesn't matter whether they're particularly pertaining to what we're directly discussing. Obviously, questions related to the subtle realms, stick them in and we'll try and catch up with them at some point during the session. So Sally says, the bottom line is, why can sleeping over crossing water lines be bad for us? And her whole question actually is really nice. It's a really nice, Sally's a lovely lady, she's got a really nice way with words as well. So I'm going to read you the whole question, right? Because it puts it all into context. My answer might actually be shorter than the question, but there we go. She says, water. Why does water seem to be a detrimental energy when dowsing? I always think of water as such a positive life force, relaxing, calming, beautifully sparkly, magical life-giving. Adds a ridiculous amount to the house value if you're thinking of trying, if you're thinking of trying to live or have a holiday alongside it, right? So she's just saying that a location with water is really desired. Don't read public, sir. I want to ask why I fell drain. Oh, okay. So, Joshua, yeah. So I don't do so much dowsing live like a card reading. You fell down a drain. You were dowsing probably for a kilometre. Probably isn't bad, to be honest with you, Joshua. If you do want a specific answer to a specific question with that kind of intuitive dowsing response, you can always contact me on the website, www.knightsrose.com. Use the contact form, okay, mate? But I think you're probably fine if you're healthy and stuff, if you're okay there, Joshua. So, Sally's question is, why is water regarded as negatively if you happen to be living a lot above an underground watercourse? Why is it? Is it always detrimental? And if so, why? Can it ever be a positive asset? What if you're lucky enough to have a stream in your garden? Could this actually be detrimental too? Supposing it starts as an underground watercourse that runs beneath your house and then emerges in the garden as a beautiful bubbling stream. How can it be detrimental in one state and then positive in the other? She finishes with, or am I just reading too much into this? Well, no, she's not really reading too much into it. It's a very good question, really. How is water detrimental? Some time ago, crossing water lines were pretty well established in Germany to be detrimental. They were found to be cause of all sorts of illness, could be associated with crossing water lines. Now, the bottom line is, well, there's several things, aren't there? Let's just look at this. If you've got a house and you've got a crossing, we'll just make it as simple as possible, okay? So, and you've got a crossing point, and let's say that a bed for a person is sleeping above that crossing point. In the nature of the uniqueness of each of us, so the uniqueness of each individual being, that crossing point is not going to be detrimental for every single person that might possibly sleep in that position. So let's say that house is there for 100 years. Let's say it gets sold every 10 years. So let's say there's 10 people that use that particular room as a place to sleep and they put their bed in the same place. So you've got 10 people being potentially affected by the energy field, the electromagnetic energy field of the water line that is crossing beneath. One of them might be affected out of the 10, detrimentally, and one of them might be affected in that one person might be affected in all sorts of different ways. There are loads of different ways that people can be affected detrimentally, from just simply not sleeping very well to, again, as we just had said just now, to the most chronic of illnesses, which could be life-threatening, which could be cancer. There might be a similarity, there might be a connection between sleeping over crossing water lines and a serious illness like cancer. Can't say 100% for sure. And again, that indication will be reflected in your own individual reality as to whether that be the case or not. But let's say you got one person there. So what happens there? What happens to the other 9 people? Well, in that case, it's not a detrimental water crossing point, is it? Because for them, it doesn't affect them. So water, we can't say that water simply is detrimental per se. We cannot say that. And don't forget that we have to look, when we're dealing with dowsing and working in the subtle energies, we have to look at, I'll come to that in a second, Ron, we have to look at everything as being from the perspective of the individual. So it's not like saying that we're looking from it's not like saying that we're looking at objectively at the outside world, so that those 10 people are all going to be affected in the same way. What we actually do is we look at the perspective of the individual and look at their world, their world, right? Their world. So if I was unlucky enough to be that individual that was affected by the water crossing point, then we would be looking in my world at what goes on, what else is going on in my world, where is this sort of illness that might be manifesting from this as part of its contributing factor, where else does it manifest in that person's world, in that person's life? Water flow, water in terms of healing represents flow and healing, and it is generally considered to be a positive aspect to reality. Okay, right? We know that, and this is what is reflected in Sally's question there when she's describing the wonderful bubbling little stream going through some land there. Very positive and life enhancing. What would we be without water? We would not be very much. So water per se is not detrimental. And we do come on to Ron's question, because Lawrence there has replied straight away to Ron asks, is it possible to go dowsing on a boat? And Lawrence is yes. And Lawrence was exactly the person that I thought of as soon as I saw that question there from Ron. Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely possible to douse, because, Ron, don't forget, you're not dowsing. I know you've just thought of it because it just kind of, we're talking about water and you kind of just logically jump to boats and stuff. But, you know, if you think about what dowsing is just the focus on specifically what you're looking for. So you can be on a boat surrounded by water, but you're not using your dowsing to look for the water. You're using your dowsing, for example, as Lawrence has, to actually navigate in potentially, hazardous conditions. So I know that Lawrence wrote some time ago about an experience where he doused his way in when they were on a boat, where it was just couldn't see anything. It was just complete fog, and they were trying to make port, come into land, and Lawrence doused the passage the way through, which is great. So can sleeping over water lines be bad for us? And the answer is yes, it can. It can be revealed as part of the picture of a person's world when they're suffering from an illness. It needn't be as chronic and severe as cancer. And what is it about water that potentially is detrimental? Well, nobody actually really knows. Yes, you could. It does. You can. In fact, you can use dowsing instead of GPS altogether, if you want to be focused on that, Rod. What we think is the main issue with water, underground water. Now, think about underground water, right? So if you've got a house sitting on land, let's say it's a little sort of cartoon-like hillock, right? So you've got this sort of hillock of land. we'll just say it's a hillock just because it's an easy illustration. It's not, but house, land. People often think you've got streams flowing everywhere, and you've got basins, underground basins of water, and that's what you're aiming at. Well, it's not really true, because most water that is in the ground is simply trickling in various concentrations of trickleness, like water passing through a sponge. So it's all sort of gently trickling downwards, but it's well, this is surface water. Obviously, water from rain is permeating through, but then there's water that is within the earth, quite deep within the earth, that actually flows around. But the water that comes down as surface water and trickles down through the ground, basically the ground is like a sponge. So any house is likely to have some kind of water influence upon the owners of the people living in the house. So don't think of it necessarily when you're dowsing for water in your own homes, for example. Okay, if you're dowsing for detrimental water, don't forget to ask that you're looking for is there a detrimental water line affecting this room, or is there a detrimental water line affecting this house, right? That would be the first one to ask. And then you say, okay, well, which room is it in? Is it in the living room? Is it in the kitchen? Is it in the is it affecting the bedroom? Is it just affecting the garage? Maybe, I don't know, whatever you want to ask. But if you're looking for the detrimental water line, you ask specifically for the detrimental water line. If you get a yes on that first question of is there a detrimental water line in this house, affecting this house, or affecting us in this house, then you want to ask how many are there, because it might be more than one. And obviously, if you've got a crossing point, you've got two at least. If you've got three, you've got a magnified impact from that line. So just think about the dowsing process and the dowsing questions that you're going to ask. But what we think it is that affects it and makes it detrimental is that as the water trickles down and gets kind of compressed by the rock, which it will do, and there's small little movements of the earth is moving all the time, and there's little, there's this movement of rock on rock can create what they call the piezoelectric effect. And what they think is that actually this sort of pressure on the water trickling through is changing the ionization of the water. So let me get this right. They think that ion levels, let me just read this properly. Elevated negative air ion levels. So in other words, once this field of energy comes up from the ground into the air, into the space in which we're living, it becomes it interferes with the air ion levels. And if it's a negative charge, then it is believed to have beneficial effects on humans. Okay, so this is I'm reading it because I had to look it up myself. So it's believed to be an enhanced feeling of relaxation, more energy, less tiredness, lower stress levels, lower things like irritability, depression, and general levels of tension, right? So that's negatively charged air ions. So that's the good stuff. The bad stuff is that it's possible that once it ionizes into the air, that it actually charges it more positively. And therefore, what we get is abundance of an overdose of stress response, neurohormone serotonin, and so therefore the stress levels rise. Now, Digsy is saying they cause you discomfort. How does a steel rod poked into the ground in the center of that flow neutralize it? Yeah, okay. Hey, yippee-yay-yay. Full Monty. So, we won't say the rest of that, will we? So if you've got positively ionized air, then what we're saying is that that's going to add, physiologically, that's going to influence the human immune system. It's going to raise the stress levels. It means that as the stress levels raise, your autoimmune system is lowered. You are more open to infection and to all of the things that can affect you detrimentally. And in the worst case, you're going to suffer with the things that produce cancer, right? So now what we're not saying, Diggsy, is that everybody is going to get cancer. Okay, I mean that's a no-no. Where we are with you, and you being influenced by earth rays or by underground water. In fact, there are other people that are sensitive to underground water flows too, and sometimes don't realize it. Underground water flows can seem to bring on, where we're dealing with somebody that's got a very, very high level of stress, it can pop them into an almost anxiety state, it would seem, possibly. That's yet to be confirmed, but that is possible, because in those instances, we're dealing with the physiological reaction, and the physiology is a subconscious process or an unconscious process. I never remember what the correct term is. When the conscious mind becomes aware that there's something wrong, it's being alerted by the subconscious, by the unconscious, and it can go into a state of, oh, we don't know what that is, and therefore it goes into extra stress, hyper stress, and therefore lead eventually into an anxiety attack. Diggsy, what you have is something that stops you sleeping well. And therefore you ask, how does a steel rod hammered into the ground in the appropriate place affect that, what we assume is a positively ionized air situation? So science-wise, I've got no idea. Bottom line, I've got no idea how putting a steel rod into a place, or putting a rod of any kind into a specific position, would affect positive ionization of the air. But what we do know is that the intention of it, the intention of, exactly, so you're on the same, we're talking the same language here, obviously, as you would expect, because you're regular. What you're dealing with and what you're doing when you put in that rod into the ground is you're using your intention, the energy of intention, the focus of intention, the physical hammering, whether it's done by you or somebody else. And we know that quite often it's done, I don't know whether your dad still does it, but you're dowsing it and you're locating it, which is your intuition. You're using it, you're using your intuition and the subtle energies, and you're working in that realm where you are influencing. So what I'm saying here is, this is like physical energy. This is like physical change. I don't know, if you decided you were going to move your bed, that would be the physical energy of moving your bed. What we're saying here is that actually what you're doing is working on the subtle level, and that is all about mind. It's all about your energy of your true spiritual self in such a level that you are, some people are not even able to access that level. But unfortunately for you at the moment, it's all coming in as detrimental. You're able to fix it now because you moved on to fixing it. You used to have your dad to do it, meaning that your father was an experienced dowser and experienced at fixing this. Not saying, Dad, can you help me? You know what I'm saying, Diggsy. You might be able to explain it better. Why does that work for you? It's not just about the power of positive thinking. It's not just about you knowing that this is going to work and therefore it works. Right? There is something far more substantial than that, but it's so nebulous and is not scientifically accepted. But it is you connecting on that very subtle level with everything in creation, in your experience of reality. And I still say that actually one of the best things that you can do is to, when you get time, maybe when your little one has grown up a little bit more and you've actually got more time, because at the moment you won't have time, to explore your spiritual connection. I don't want to compare you to your sister, but your sister has accessed that. And really, I want you to do that, because what I see, not only for you, but for others, is that this sort of interference and this sort of issue that manifests as a problem can be turned around completely on its head and become the gift. that enables you to actually expand your life, see your life from a different perspective. That's why I'd always encourage you to do that. Nobody's answering you there, Diggsy, but we know that this rod method is used a lot. There's a lot of dowsers that do exactly that. They insist on going onto the premises and hammering a rod into the ground, just as you've described. So it's a very standard practice. Okay, Ron, where are we going with this? There is a huge electrostatic gradient as height above ground increases. Try flying a kite using that orange electric fence wire. Don't touch the end. So using a metal rod in the ground could conduct any charge up to the surface. Right, okay. So there you go. Right, brilliant, Ron, thank you. So there's a very strong link there with the electrostatic and the ionization of the air and changing, therefore, probably changing the charge. Who knew? There you go. Fantastic. So the bottom line on Sally's question, why does water seem to be detrimental? It's not detrimental per se, is it? I mean, that's where we're going to, just to recap on this again. Water is not detrimental per se. Every single, it's a maybe, I get it, yeah. Every single crossing point is not necessarily detrimental. What we do know is that wherever we get a crossing of whatever line it may be, hello Tammy, good to see you, is that if there's going to be a detrimental effect for somebody, then the crossing point will magnify the detrimental effect. So if you've got a water line that's ambling through and affecting where you sleep, that is not going to be as detrimental for you as if there's another one ambling through and crossing that point, right? And if that crossing point is directly where your head is, for example, then that usually manifests in more acute cases of people being unwell. Exactly, it is indeed earth acupuncture, and we do absolutely think that the ancients were using earth acupuncture when they were putting in standing stones. And I will revisit the standing stone that is in the garden and see what the water's doing around that. And I'm going to go to a church that's nearish us fairly soon, so that I can douse and see what we've got with in terms of electrical charge or electrostatic charge, perhaps, as Ron would say, top and bottom of the tower, and I'll have a little douse around and see what the earth energy is doing there. I'm going to do that near as damn it to St. Michael's Day, which is later in September. But it should be quite interesting, and that actually has been a suggestion by, I don't know his name, he's a lovely guy. He used to put loads and loads of questions, but I think I might have put him off. But I hope he's still with us, and hopefully he'll give some feedback on when we do that dowsing. And I think it's very, very interesting that what we're finding, even in the time that I've had the YouTube channel, we're finding more and more evidence for this electrostatic nature of existence, and the fact that earth energy, these fields of energy that we talk about, are probably some kind of mix between the electrostatic fields of energy, that I'm going to keep using electrostatic now, Ron, and magnetism as well. So they seem to be a mix of this geomagnetic fields, which is what Hamish always said they were. But it may well be that these are absolutely the case, and it's really interesting to see how the information is developing. Nancy, what are we saying here? It's striking me that it would take an endless effort to adjust our environment for our benefit. Wouldn't it be more effective to work with personal protection? Well, yes, you can do that. I mean, yes. I mean, there's a slight feeling of being a little bit kind of overawed. Let's use that little fly again. It's a little midge. Overawed there, or overwhelmed, Nancy. It's not really an endless effort to adjust the environment, because actually one can go about adjusting one's home environment in a very logical fashion. So what is that logical fashion? Well, you work with the things that you know about. So for example, Nancy, if you're competent and confident in your dowsing, you could be asking about, are there detrimental earth energy lines adversely affecting me? Are there detrimental water lines adversely affecting me? in the home, right? And it doesn't take a lot of effort to do the dowsing. Make a note somewhere so that you don't immediately forget what the results are that you're getting when you're dowsing. So in other words, do your own little report for yourself. And then if you've got those issues coming up, then you basically, what I would say for you, somebody like you, Nancy, is to really, if you're okay with meditating, sit in meditation, connect to yourself in that sense of your higher self, right? Your soul self in that meditation state, and then ask and sort of address that aspect of you, address that as the universe, God, if you want to use that word, and ask them to rebalance those lines that you have doused and you have found. Okay, leave it, and then be thankful for it, be grateful for it, and then in a couple of days, douse and see whether they're still there. So ask the same questions again. Okay, I mean the intention and the healing that we do, really as house healers, really is the sort of intention and subtle energy work that dear old Joe Dispenza talks about doing on an individual level. You know, he talks about working with the subtle energies of the body and the mind in that sort of deeply spiritual way. And what we do as house healers really is taking his work to a certain extent. I mean, aspects of his work. I mean, there's echoes of his work. I'm not saying we're not nicking his process. It's just, it's lovely that there are people like him about that are actually verifying and adding to the work that has been going on for decades. You know, anyway, we use that, and we use that in the context of healing the house, and that affects the person as well as the house. House healing is not about just working on the space, it's about the person that lives in the space. The two are one, the two are two, the two are one, the two are joined. What I was going to say when I was getting sidetracked by Joe Dispenza's energy there was that for decades, this intentional healing, this healing with the power of intent, has been going on. There's an organization that I've mentioned before called Fountain International. That has been going for decades and decades. That has been focusing loving energy into spaces to help alleviate social problems within spaces. It's been going for decades. And really, people like Joe Dispenza now are working with exactly the same processes as those people were back in the 70s, 80s, of which Hamish was a part, Hamish Miller, my mentor. So it's all just now being packaged slightly differently, which is wonderful. And of course, yeah, I mean, of course, exactly. Some of you are saying it and thinking it. This is ancient, true wisdom that people have used for the benefit of humanity and realities for eons, not just decades. Anywho, so Nancy, what I'm saying is it's not an endless amount of effort, but yes, the immediate sort of stopgap, if you like, is to just put in more protection. But you see, again, you can't exclude or ignore the fact that you are an aspect right at the end, an aspect of the management. So if you think about, this as being illustrative, this is me, this is you, Nancy, this is JF, for example, this is Ron. We as individual points of awareness of the universe are connected all the time back into the management, and eventually back to the ultimate creator. So everything that we experience has got literally the hand of the management involved in it. So your life, your existence is as it is, partly because the management wants it like that. And sometimes that is because the management is trying to get you to go, oh, maybe I should look at X, Y, Z. Because we're not all, we get so, okay, so several things, because we're not all, let me backtrack just a sec. It's not always easy to tune into the subtle energies. That's what I was trying to say. So the management use all sorts of ways and devices and means to help nudge us if we're kind of going way off track from what we've agreed to before we were incarnated in this form. Okay, so I certainly believe, we're getting a little bit off topic, but I think we should go here. I certainly believe that we make agreements to what we're going to face and what we're going to cover and how we're going to evolve our energy from point A of being born to point B of passing on and stepping back into the world that we came from. We have things that we are going to do. Those are not specifically things like, I didn't necessarily agree to set up a video production company, for example, way back. That was, my old job. That wouldn't have been an agreement, but what I would have agreed was some of the emotional states of being that I encountered through having set up that video production company. So in other words, what we do is irrelevant before we incarnate, but how we do it are the things that we learn from. How we behave, how we react, how we live is the bottom line of what we agree to before we come into this life. Yeah, it is, absolutely. Cloud computing, yeah, brilliant. And actually, interestingly enough, I'll come back to Sally's questions in a sec. Interestingly enough, I was watching some more Greg Braden recently. Greg Braden's work, I really admire it. He's a great communicator. I hadn't watched any for some time. Good, thanks, Jeff, great. And I was watching some of Greg Braden's stuff, and what I see now is that he is pretty well encompassing and putting his arm around the fact that this reality is pretty likely to be, I've lost the word. What's the word? Where artificial, what's the blinking word? Help me out, somebody. Okay, Nancy, good. Yeah, Greg Braden. Oh, come on. It's the reality. It's the concept of reality being an artificial construction. What do they call it? Simulation. Thank you, Ron. Thank you. Good heavens. Good heavens. Dear me. So I think that we had yeah, intelligent design is a great book, Margie. Good to see you. Yeah, thanks, Boykin. I think we can put more. Yeah. I think we had a little bit of a moment there. So Greg Braden seems to be really encompassing this idea that reality is a simulation, and I think that's a really interesting concept. Now, obviously, bearing in mind that every generation and every state of society uses its current operating systems as analogies, it would be fairly predictable that we would start to call reality a simulation, because we are very aware of artificial design, intelligent design, and AI and all the rest of it now. And so using computer terminology would be an appropriate way for this era to be describing reality. And it doesn't matter. I think that the simulation is really quite interesting, because it says so much about the fact that not only, if we then say, well, okay, this is a simulation, what it says is somebody created the simulation. So to me, it's a lot easier to think of the management as personality aspects that are there involved in the creation of reality. And we're in this time to be experiencing what we're experiencing. This current shift, Tammy, is causing issues for quite a lot of people in different ways, and it will continue to. And maybe we'll touch on COVID-19 a little in a minute as we move forward, because that's one of the things that's been put in place as an aspect for many of us to deal with. So, I think that, there's almost we might use that question actually, Tammy. I'm going to make a note of that. 5D transition, right? Because I think that there's something in there that we can probably talk about in the future as a launch pad, because the shift into 5D, the age of Aquarius, the inevitable change of everything it's a really big deal, really big deal. Or is it? That's the point. I mean, people individually find it difficult. Oh, okay, so we're going to talk about COVID-19. So people individually find it difficult, without a doubt. And it's like, okay, so there's a lot of talk, and we kind of hinted here on this channel, I think the last time, that maybe the pandemic isn't all it's set up to be. Well, it is. It's a pandemic. There's no doubt about that. It's a pandemic of some sort. Not even going to go into conspiracy theories of was it man-made or blah, 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 and let's not go there. But there is also no doubt that some people that get it are very seriously ill. No doubt at all. No doubt. And I'm not saying that that is not an issue, because it is, and there are all sorts of ways. And I know that there are some on, oh, Joshua, bless you. There's some on the channel here watching that have direct experience, not only of relatives or friends that have had COVID-19 and got very close to the edge, but also, oh, hello, yes, Sean, yes. They, so there's a serious issue, right? But one of the issues is, and this has always been the issue that has bothered me since it started to kind of kick in March, is what is going to happen from this point on. So this is, there's an article here, I'm going to touch on this. If anybody doesn't want me to go into this, just if you're getting bored, just, obviously you'll leave, but just say so, or, we'll go somewhere else. But I think this is really interesting because there's so much disinformation and misinformation about COVID-19. And the fact is that actually, I don't think that any of us actually know what the facts are. So I go back to jolly old New Scientist magazine, and on the 12th of September, so that's just a couple of days ago, this was dated. And this is an article by a journalist called Donna Liu, and it says, huge surge in UK cases. Almost 3,000 new cases reported, bear with me, a day as the number of infections in people younger than 40 rises sharply. So, and then it goes into the drama, because it's obviously the first sentence of any article written is always the drama to get people hooked. And it says the UK is experiencing a surge of new coronavirus cases following in the footsteps of several other Western European countries, including Spain and France. Okay, on Sunday, 2,988 new cases were reported, the highest number of positive cases in a single day in the UK since the 22nd of May. Again, alarmist, but it's fact. Fact. We take it as fact. According to government figures. 7-day rolling average of new cases has increased to 1,812 cases per day, up from 1,244 the week before and 1,040 a fortnight before. This is new cases being diagnosed. The rise in cases may partly be due to increases in testing throughout the UK. Throughout August, more than 170,000 tests were processed, compared with about 70,000 daily tests at the beginning of May. So 100,000 more tests. A surprise, surprise, is revealing more people with COVID-19. Well, duh. And to be fair, the article does continue. The proportion that test positive is going up as well, so says Matt Hancock. Right, despite the increase in cases, the number of seriously ill people in hospital with COVID-19 remains low, and only 2 deaths within the 28 days of a positive test were recorded on Sunday. So that's a few days before the 12th. However, there may be a lag time of a few weeks before mortality figures catches up with the new case. The majority of the new cases seem to be in younger people. Well, we know that is what is generally being reported, while the rate of infection among older people has fallen. That is not being reported. The number of positive cases in those aged under 40 is increasing. But they are the ones that have a far less serious chance of being hospitalized or from the disease being fatal. And there's a guy here, one of the health experts, who is a guy called Van Tam, who is saying that the fact that 17 to 21-year-olds are not becoming ill means they are lucky, but they also forget, because the disease is not severe for them, that they are potent spreaders. Okay, so I'm not going to go into that, but the bottom line that I take from that is actually, as has been said before, COVID-19 can be serious, but it is not as serious generally, and generally, as the mainstream media, mainly the television news, would have us believe. The point being is that it's up to each person to actually decide how they want. Yeah, I know this is not rocket science, and I'm not really lecturing. It's up to each individual to decide how they want to respond. Because if you've had a relative or a friend get really seriously ill with the disease, then you are going to be very much of a different mindset to somebody that actually has seen no impact at all with anybody, right? It's a very different scenario, but it's the same scenario as it would be with any contagious disease that creates. And overall, what we're seeing is that COVID-19 is not the zombie plague apocalypse that it was and still seems to be being peddled as. I'm going to put a link in the comments section, which is actually linking to another YouTube channel, which is a natural health approach. And here in the UK, we have a government that is putting through, and it is currently open for consultation, but is only for the next 4 days until the 18th of September. The UK government is wanting to pass new law to completely change the way that it pushes through medical vaccines, so vaccines, basically. And what it seems to be saying, I haven't read it fully, what it seems to be saying is that actually the government are now about to green light the idea of using vaccines that have not gone through the very rigorous testing process that all medication has been going through since the 60s. And the reason why we say the 60s, of course, was because of the thalidomide issue, right? So there is an opportunity in the UK, and please click on the link. It is a link to anhinternational.org news, UK law changes for COVID-19 mass vaccination, because there is an opportunity for as many of us as believe this to be the case to say, no, we don't think that this is appropriate, because actually what that change in law is doing is saying that anybody can be vaccinated with drugs that have not gone through full testing, and there is no recourse. This is being put in as part of law. There is no recourse if those drugs turn out to have massive side effects. Nice. That isn't even, I'm not even touching on the conspiracy theories of mass population control. I'm just saying, here in the UK, this is what the government is trying to do. And that is not appropriate for a situation that actually the fatality rate, and you know, bless anybody that has been seriously struck down with it, but the fatality rate is something way down, way less than, you know, way less than 1%, way less as far as I understand it. I would, yeah, okay, so I've gone off on one there, but I think the COVID-19 stuff is appropriate, and it would be good for everybody to just to review their own views on it. And if they, so in Canada or USA, if they look as though they're being laws that are being put in the same way as they are here in the UK. I mean, here in the UK, they're using the Brexit thing as an excuse for the law to be changed. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. It's just outrageous, to be honest. There you go. So have a look, see what your local government's doing if you can. USA, I don't know how the hell that's going to fit in with the elections, but there you go. So the main thing is, as we sort of started talking about the water, the key to this channel, I guess, and everything we discuss on these lives is about our awareness of our unique world in which we live. And as we've said so many times, being mindful of how we respond to information that comes into our world is the key to that, so that we can respond and decide how to react, and not just react in the knee-jerk manner that is habit. Not easy. It's not easy. Okay. Yeah. Is dowsing really the low vibrational cousin of spiritual interaction? Well, I put that in there, and we'll just touch on this as we come to the end, because it's relevant to this whole concept of the individual world in which we live. There are some people that I suggest, some people come to me to learn more about dowsing and to improve their connection to the management. And actually, it's happened on workshops here, when we used to have workshops one-to-one, in physical world. It's happened online when I do mentoring sessions one-to-one with people. Sometimes it's actually better for the person to say, no, don't do the don't douse. Don't douse. It's not for you. So just in the same way as we've been talking today about the individual influence of detrimental influence of water lines crossing, it's sometimes not appropriate for people to do dowsing themselves, because actually they tune in perfectly well without doing what is a very fundamental and fundamentally clunky process of dowsing. So when I say, rather teasingly, is dowsing really the low vibrational cousin of spiritual interaction? I mean, to a certain extent, I'm, teasing. But it is actually the best way for anybody to actually open the door on their spiritual selves, on the subtle energies. Dowsing is brilliant at helping people go, oh, hello, what's in here? And that's why I'm really keen on it. It's not fantastic. It's not fantastic to be, oh, sorry, I'm confused. Jim Ellis, I'm not sure. Anyway, I'll look up Jim Ellis later. It's not necessarily a fantastic way to communicate with angelic, with the angels or something. If you're a naturally sensitive medium and you just haven't realized it, because some people are like that, just naturally mediumistic, and that can be the source of so much chaos and confusion. And if that turns out to be the case, then the last thing that person really needs to do is to go off and get a pendulum and start watching a pendulum and start watching the rods just to see what they're doing, because that's not the way for them to tune in. Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha. Okay, Jim, I got you. I knew the name was familiar. Right, cool. Okay, so that is sometimes the case, right? So it can happen. Right, let's rewind a little bit. What we term as a spiritual awakening, which is a shift of energies, which suddenly or not suddenly allows us to perceive things that up to that point hadn't really been perceivable. That's a spiritual awakening. sometimes it is, you kind of go so much along that wave that actually there is no point in trying that. And now I don't know whether this is the case, Jim, if you've been trying to do the dowsing and the dowsing has just been driving you nuts, then it's probably the management saying, well, don't do the dowsing. And I was thinking about this over the weekend, actually, because Hugo from Canada, hopefully he'll watch this on playback or something. But Hugo has been dedicated to trying to get dowsing to work for him. And the last thing I heard, it still wasn't going terribly well, not to his satisfaction. And it's possible that Hugo's in exactly the same situation as you are, Jim, by the sounds of it, that the spirituality, the connection to these energies is enabling you to see life from a different perspective once you've got the boat level. You might have been rocked by it to start with, as is quite often the case, because suddenly people realize the world is not what it seems, not what they thought it was. It's actually what they think it is. Okay. So once you get the boat level, then it may be that you don't need to do the dowsing. You just go with the mediumistic connection, because you're going to be picking stuff up from people all the time. And it's about exactly. It's about learning what is you and what is somebody else, and learning how to switch that on when you want to use it, to work with it for somebody else, or when to keep away, because that is the fundamental. And that's the same, that actually applies equally to Digsy, if Digsy's still online or not. It's exactly the same process. It's all about subtle energy management, learning to switch it off or learning to switch it on, allow it through on your level, which is where Nancy was coming from. Nancy wants to be able to feel relaxed and stress-free in her environment, and therefore she's saying, well, surely it must be easier to put in all the protection than to be going around and finding the detrimental influences. Well, it's all about subtle energy management, because it's all exactly the same thing. It's just that nobody has taught this stuff. Yeah, that's fine, and that's exactly right, Jim. Because this is why I go on about dowsing so much, because it's the easiest way for people to step through the doorway, to find this aspect of self, to find this aspect of everything. I'm pleased that yours wasn't an unpleasant experience. It doesn't have to be unpleasant. And then what I hope is that everybody will move on and follow paths and avenues that they're particularly interested in. And again, actually, I'm going to bring this back around to the house healing, because this is one of the things this is what I do when I'm teaching the house healing. I teach the basics of the house healing, and for each individual, JF can verify this or not. He might think I'm talking nonsense. He might be going, oh, really? Is that what you do? But anyway, what I hope to be doing is helping and encouraging the individual to expand their connection to upstairs, because that is the one crucial thing about doing energy work. If you're going to work in a healing capacity for anybody else, then that is the integral connection that needs to be confidently in place. It's the individual's unique connection and their understanding of the subtle energy management to then be able to work with that to help somebody else, or help themselves, or help their family. Okay? Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing, isn't it? It's the same thing, Lawrence. It is. Yeah, and a lot of people are. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I can't take your analogy any further into the chaos. A lot of people can be affected quite in a very chaotic way by the spiritual awakening. But yeah, so coming back to this low vibrational cousin of spiritual interaction. So it's also the key thing. What do we mean by low vibration? What do we mean by high vibration? Well, we kind of get it. don't we? We kind of get it. We kind of think, oh yeah, low vibration has all this anger and stuff like that, and high vibration means that we can talk to the angels and guides and all of this sort of stuff. I know I'm sounding a bit facetious, but I don't mean it to be like that. And so therefore what I'm saying is that dowsing is down here. Well, I'm not really saying that. I kind of am, but I'm not really saying, because you can use it along the spectrum. Actually, as Lawrence says, use it when you want to use it. Don't use it when you don't need to use it. But the whole point of as your vibration shifts, then your world changes. The people that you meet change. They become far more joyous in themselves because their vibrations are higher, and therefore you are interacting with higher resonating frequencies of beings around you. Information, we are only information, and therefore the information is resonating, vibrating at a slightly higher rate. There actually is no difference in terms of what's better. Let's say low vibration, that's not a bad thing compared to a high vibration of spiritual interaction. It's just different. That might be completely appropriate for some people, and some people might completely be happy staying there. Other people, maybe they want to move on and do other stuff. Hey Phyllis, nice to see you. We're about to close things off, but good to see you. Yeah, indeed, JF, indeed there are. Okie doke. So, gosh, did I stop and give you a chance to ask questions? We're going to draw it to a close the next couple of minutes, but any last minute? It does seem to be quite a long way behind me rabbiting on. Excuse me while I take a quick slurp. Nice cup of tea, but it's gone quite cold. Any last questions from anybody? On this particular thing, Dixie, I think Dixie's probably gone, but I don't know whether we helped Dixie at all in that. I think for sure we've helped Sally today with her questions, and they've been great questions. Done. Oh, excellent. Okay, excellent. I will look that up because that's fine. Venus is good. And Tammy, no, you didn't take us off. Didn't take me off topic. I just go wherever you guys want. So whoever gets in there. I mean, I won't Google life on Venus and stuff now, but it is really, really interesting, and it is going to be really, really interesting.